a budget to resolve the housing crisis, but today Minister McGrath and Minister Donoghue have failed in that regard.
Hear, hear.
Fine Gael and Fianna Fáil have caused the housing crisis, and today's budget is further confirmation that they are not the ones to fix it. We needed a budget for renters, instead we got a budget for landlords.
So that's your roundup of Budget 2024. I'm Brona Gately.
And thank you, Brona, for that. It's coming up to 11 minutes past 10 on this, your Wednesday edition of South East Radio's Morning Mix. We're going to look at the budget in two parts. I'm going to be joined now in just a moment by Minister of State for Finance, Jennifer Carroll MacNeill. And in the second hour of the show, we'll be hearing from Neil Hughes from ASEDS to look at the effect on small and medium enterprise, which is so crucial to this county of ours. I have in studio with me Dr. Ray Griffin from SETU Waterford, lecturer in School and Business. He gave a very informative talk this morning, courtesy of PwC and Wexford Chamber. We'll hear from him. But first of all, let's link in with the Minister now. Good morning to you, Minister.
Good morning. Good morning.
So what has been the reaction that you've been receiving on the ground to Budget 2024?
A lot of questions, a lot of what are the range of supports that are available to me? This is my circumstances. How does it impact me? And I think those are fair questions because a lot of the supports are well distributed across one-off payments, across tax changes, across supports for families. And it can be a bit overwhelming to try to pull it together to see what's applicable to you. Like we even saw that with our renters tax credit last year. Only half of the number of people that we thought would apply for it have so far applied. And I really would encourage anyone to apply because you can still get it retrospectively. And now this year, there may be people in Wexford who have sent their kids to college and they're in digs. Those parents are now eligible for that tax credit also and in a retrospective way. So it can be challenging to see all of the different supports. And I even saw that on prime time last night, people who thought perhaps they hadn't benefited in any way. When you go through it, in fact, there's quite a lot for different people in different circumstances. So that's the reaction I'm getting so far, and I'm only too keen to try to provide information and signposts to the supports available.
Well, any of our Morning Mix listeners who would like to text in fairly quickly now a question for the Minister, by all means do it, or pick up the phone and give Marianne a call on 0539145222. As I'm sure many radio people and people in the media have been doing, bogged down in so much information this morning. I've looked at it in a couple of headings: the winners, the losers, the positives, the negatives. Actually, Hugh O'Connell in the Irish Independent has the winners down as every household, and the losers as most homeowners, which is a bit contradictory. So, first off, for every household, what's in it for them, please?
Well, let's take a family with working parents. Both of those working parents will get an additional tax decrease on top of what was there last year. They'll particularly benefit if they're in that bracket between 40 and 45,000. We've moved 220,000 people out of the upper tax bracket in the last 3 years, and that makes a big difference at that income point. There's also an increase to the eligibility to working family support. Of course, we're extending the free book scheme for kids up to junior cycle in addition to primary school. They'll get a double child benefit before Christmas. They'll also get energy grants. They will benefit if they have a car from the continued reduced excise prices. They'll also continue to benefit from keeping VAT down on gas, electricity. We're extending child benefit. Right. So it really depends. If you're living alone, if you're an older person living alone, of course you will benefit from the permanent increase in pension, but you'll also benefit maybe from the lump sum living alone allowance, a €200 lump sum there, a €300 lump sum for the fuel allowance. That's in addition to the energy credits that people are getting. So it sort of depends on your circumstances, but there's a lot of support there.
All right. And then taking Hugh's article where he says the losers are also the homeowners, and he says a succession of ECB rate hikes since last year have battered some homeowners and the government had to step in, but his temporary and targeted measure will affect only a fraction, 165,000 out of more than 700,000. So that's over 515,000 people who are not going to see the benefit of this.
And a number of those will already be on fixed rate mortgages and haven't seen the income rate, the rate change pressure on their mortgages. So it really is targeted because, look, we could have spent up to 700 million, nearly €1 billion on giving every mortgage holder in Ireland some support. But a lot of those maybe have very small mortgages. A lot of those haven't seen a big change in their prices because they were on fixed mortgages or they managed to switch to a fixed mortgage before the interest rate hikes. But those people who are between with a mortgage of 80,000, and we're capping it at €500,000 because we're not trying to provide supports to people with mortgages of €2 million or anything remotely like it. We are targeting it. Those people who have seen an uplift in their mortgage payments and mortgage interest payments between 2022 and 2023 2023. There will be a 20% release there for them. So, you know, we could do everything for everyone, but we can't afford that, and we have to try and target it in a way where we think it's going to have the best impact on those who genuinely need it most.
Right, let's look at another positive. Students and their parents, college fees for households. I'm Dr. Ray Griffin in studio, going to look at the Wexford economy with me in just a second. This is good news, I'm told, for earners. There's a cut of €1,000 in fees. That will be music to the ears of many parents.
I think it will, because that's a real pressure, and you know, people want to see their their children, their young adults going off to college and taking the great education opportunities that are there. But I recognise how expensive that is, and that's why I think it's so important. Is in addition to that cut, which comes on the back of last year's cut, also is bringing parents into the rent tax credit for their children who are staying in digs or in lodged accommodation, not just a tenancy in an apartment or something like that. So they will be able to benefit from the accommodation costs, or get some correction on the accommodation costs that they're facing and have faced with their children in college as well. So that's really important, because that's a really expensive time of life. There's another really expensive time of life for parents, and that's those early childhood years, childcare costs. Maybe you've got a mortgage as well. You're really, really struggling with everything. I know that only too well. And that additional childcare cut, 25% on average reduction in childcare costs, and that comes on the back of last year's 25% cut. So that's a big change in your outgoings every month, and I can see that in my own constituency. I hope the people in Wexford have seen that too, and we'll continue to see that now as their kids go into next year's childcare.
Let's get the reactions of some of the organisations. The teachers, although welcoming some measures, the Teachers Union of Ireland has said that the information available so far suggests that the government is in no way serious about tackling the teacher recruitment and retention crisis. The farmers, they're up in arms, and we'll be speaking to Minister Charlie McConalogue on Friday, particularly the tillage farmers. I know, I've just been told that there's €8 million being put in to the kitty for them. I'll get clarification of that from the Minister. And the Irish hospitality section, the Hotels Federation, says it's deeply disappointed with Budget 2024. Can you address teachers, farmers and hospitality? What response do you have for them, please?
The teacher recruitment challenge, I recognise that. We have a recruitment challenge right across every sector in Ireland, and teachers are no different, and there's no point in pretending otherwise. Our population has gone up by over 30%, and we have these very significant problems of growth, of having enough people in every single sector to do the jobs that we need doing, and I understand that. On farmers, I know you're speaking to Minister McConalogue later, but I would say from a finance perspective that we have extended a lot of the relief that have been there. We have increased the limit for young trained farmers from €70,000 to €100,000. We've made a major change to the retirement relief to be able to pass on farms much more easily. So we have, from a tax perspective, really tried to make sure that all of those supports are there and remain there in a multi-annual way for farmers, and for young farmers in particular, because we really need to support the agriculture sector and support the transition that they're going through in so many difficult and different ways. And I'm sorry, the third one?
Yeah, the third one I mentioned was hospitality.
Hospitality, I recognise that what they've said yesterday. They have been the beneficiary of the reduced VAT rate for a very considerable time, nearly uninterrupted for the past 10 years, and through COVID, and then again it was extended last year. And of course it was very important that we provided supports with the employment wage subsidy scheme, the business support scheme, although we would have hoped maybe more people would have taken up the support on the TBES scheme where possible. There is also a €250 million fund now with the Department of Enterprise to try to provide supports where we see the pinch points at their most acute. Yeah. But, I think that has been a sector that has been the beneficiary of very, very considerable supports. It is a sector that is going well. We see, with the population growth and the level of domestic activity, the level of domestic demand, we see restaurants and pubs full. Where their difficulty also is recruiting staff and having enough people to be able to recruit into the sector, and that is having an impact on our opening hours apart from anything else.
I have two more questions to put to you, Minister.
Could I just say about the insurance for hospitality? Sorry, no, please, me a question, sorry.
Have you broken the fiscal rules, or have you created for us a massive problem further down the line?
Well, I think that's why it's so important.
A giveaway budget is what has been described.
Yeah, I'm not sure. I think a giveaway budget would have met the desires of all of the groups that you're talking about. You're rightly pointing out the different pressures to me in different sectors. Maybe we should have done more on mortgages. Maybe we should have done more for this and that. Yeah. We didn't. It wasn't a giveaway budget. It was a budget that tried to meet the inflationary pressures and the needs of trying to carry people through and also reduce inflation. So last year we faced similar questions, similar legitimate questions. But interest rates last year were 8%. We had a cost of living budget support. It came down to 5%. We have done it again this year, and we expect inflation to come down to 2%. So we have tried to constrain our spending so that we don't, damage ourselves with inflation. But the most important thing that happened yesterday is something sort of deeply unglamorous, but we're going to see the benefit over 10 and 20 years, and that was the creation of the Future Ireland Fund, where we're going to put 4 billion in this year and 0.8% of GDP every year thereafter to develop a fund by 2035 of 100 billion euros. And that we will be able to take the interest off the top of that and use that year on year on year if we and the governments that follow us have the discipline not to dip into it before then. But that's going to be a huge difference to the budgets of 20 years to come and to the sustainability of the state and to be able to meet the needs of a growing and ageing population. And that's, I know it's not the headline, but it's actually the most important, significant thing that we did. And had we had that in 2008, had we had that sort of sovereign wealth, like Norway, although not at the same scale, we wouldn't have faced the same cuts and challenges that we had to face in 2010, 11, 12, 13. So that is a huge thing that happened yesterday. And, I'd encourage people to maybe have a look at a little bit more detail on it.